I always like to experiment with new varieties of vegetables. When I heard about cucamelon, a Mexican fruit of the same family as the cucumber, I had to try. So I purchased some seeds and planted them in cups filled with potting soil. They sprouted in a few days, and soon I could see just how similar to cucumbers they really are. Cucamelons are said to be vines that spread easily and quickly, so I'm gonna test that out and plant a few of them over near this fence. Hopefully they're gonna take over and cover the fence for this growing season. I was picking a very sunny spot with well-draining soil. In years past, I had great luck growing regular cucumbers there. The fence would provide the support for the vining tendrils. But first, I had to clear the spot from the ubiquitous ground ivy that blankets any square inch of land left unattended in my garden. My plan was to plant them here and hope they would naturally take over the space without much further intervention, since they were described as prolific in the seed catalog. They were called both cucamelons and mousemelons since their fruit looked like tiny watermelons, proper for the scale of mice. They are said to have a cucumber-like crunch and flavor, but with some tangy sourness. Growing novel edible plants is always a journey of discovery. Of course, because they looked so similar to cucumbers, it was less like meeting a complete stranger and more like getting to know a second cousin twice removed. In general, they have the same shape to their leaves as cucumbers. However, everything is smaller, including the stem. I had read that cucamelons were disease resistant when compared to cucumbers. It made sense considering they are more of a wild species. As for the cucumbers I had planted earlier, as I had shown in previous episode, they were showing good signs of growth, but their track record of utter success or failure can make me not deposit too much hope in them. But they did look generally healthy, at least for now. I could see a few signs of wilting already happening, but I decided not to panic and just conclude that some leaves appeared limp due to strong sunshine after days of rain. I'm surprised to see how fast the cucumber has grown in the past week or two. And actually, a groundhog did try to eat it. Fortunately, I was able to protect some of it, so it's under control. But once cucumber decides to start growing, you just let it. And I usually don't even like to put too much hope on it, because cucumbers, if you put too much intention on coaxing them and growing them, many times they just end up wilting and catching diseases. So I just have some skilled neglect. I just put a lot of grass clippings and mulch over them, make sure that there is enough water, either through rain or through irrigation. This year actually has been raining too much for them, and when it rains a lot, there's a greater chance of some fungal diseases happening. So I don't water them if there's no need for it. They actually prefer a steady amount of water in the roots, but they want a dry climate outside, so they grow well in drier places. Here, it can be a little bit iffy. I just don't look at them. They're kind of like cats. They'll take care of themselves. As for the cucamelon, during the first 2 weeks, they didn't appear to make much progress. The seedlings I planted close to the porch were threatened of being trampled over by fast-growing plants around them, like zinnia and the volunteer yard-long beans. So I opened up some space to allow sunlight to get to them while they established their roots. A couple of weeks later, the script had flipped, and the cucamelon with well-established roots started to send out long shoots that would grow several inches a day, trying to conquer the space around them. Despite their fragile, wiry appearance, I knew these plants would soon take over everything. That is, if they were as prolific as was advertised. We'll be right back after this commercial. This cucumber is growing by leaps and bounds, and it's always at this time that I actually like to water. And it's sort of a good coincidence that we are having a period of semi-drought, because they tend to get fungal diseases. They like warm, a warm climate but with a lot of moisture in the soil, which I don't know naturally where that's possible. Maybe in a desert near an oasis. They're growing tremendously well. They're starting to climb up the arch. I don't know if they're going to be able to get there. Usually they start to get diseases around this time also, so it's always a big risky situation. And I do see some insect damage, and that's the worst thing, because I think the potential fungal diseases would be suppressed because of the climate, but vector-borne diseases like the bacterial wilt from cucumber beetles, it just takes one cucumber beetle that's infecting the plant, and that bacteria spreading through the plant. Now, some plants are actually more immune to diseases. They're going to be able to resist the infection, but it's not always foolproof, and I try to keep as much as I can the insects controlled. I have here Mexican beetles which are starting to eat this plant, and they start nibbling in the edges, and you see skeletonized parts around the edge of the plant. Now, I'm not sure if they carry really bad bacterial wilts. I hope they don't, but I usually pick them out. And you might at first, if you're not familiar with them, you might at first think they're ladybugs because they're orange-red, sort of, and they have dots. But do not be mistaken, these are Mexican beetles. They're not the beneficial insect like ladybug. It actually eats the plant, not eats other insects that are potentially predatory. So it's a good thing to keep it in check. Now, I hope to get some cucumbers, and I do see one fruit that's set, and there are several little fruit growing. Feels like this white Holland type cucumber it produces well here for me, so it's a keeper. Now, one problem that I have some difficulty controlling, and it's probably the worst thing, is groundhogs, and you can see there are several nibbled leaves here in the understory. I've put up a cage, and that does protect, or seem to protect, most of the plant, but they just come and eat everything that's within reach. They love cucumbers or anything of that family, actually. So I'm still happy to know that I can harvest a few cucumbers here. They're actually low hanging. I'll harvest that one, but it's tough. Dealing with groundhogs is not something you want to do as a gardener. So there are hurdles to successfully grow cucumbers. Because they are highly domesticated, they succumb to diseases more frequently. But there are also rewards. Eating freshly picked cucumbers right out of the vine cannot be compared to store-bought fruit that is at least a couple of days old. Since most grocery store cucumbers travel thousands of miles to reach your plate, they will never be as crispy and succulent as homegrown ones. You must try. Speaking of veggies you cannot get in stores, it was time for me to check how the cucamelons were doing. I had neglected them for a while, leaving them to fend for themselves. Indeed, they were growing in stride, conquering the chain-link fence each day more and more. There were some weeds trying to stake claim to the space as well, like the vining morning glory. I had tried to control it a bit by cutting out some of its stem, but my main hope was that the cucamelon would soon take over at a stronger pace. A few weeks later, the fence looked more and more filled in as the cucamelon vines spread each day outward. I could see the first signs of fruit hanging. They sure looked like tiny watermelon, so I took the opportunity to try it out and see exactly how it tasted. They had a very crunchy, textured outer shell with a gelled interior. The taste was very close to cucumber with an extra tangy kick to it. I could see these being eaten in salads seasoned with salt and olive oil. A few weeks later, the entire fence was taken over with cucamelon. They sure were prolific. That was an understatement. Indeed, they grew all the way until frost. and I also had a great cucumber harvest. So, all in all, it was a great year for cucumbers.